somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again.
I am making this video because I promised myself I would. The first Last of Us is still, to this day, one of my favorite video games of all time, and I still consider it one of the best stories ever told in media in the last decade. Although the trope had kind of been played out at this point, it is still, in my opinion, the best example of a father-daughter bond in a post-apocalypse world. So when The Last of Us Part 2 got announced, I was excited, and then the spoilers happened. And then more spoilers. And then more spoilers. By the time the game had came out and I finally had a chance to play it, I had had every single plot detail spoiled. It hurt, I couldn't believe what had happened, but I decided to play the game anyway, just to see if it was really as bad as everyone said it was. And the most annoying thing about it is that it was both way worse than anyone had said, and not near as bad as anyone had said either. The Last of Us Part 2 has become one of the most frustrating stories I have ever encountered. On the one hand, it is near perfect gameplay and graphics that tell an overarching story that is very well put together and portrayed to the player. On the other hand, as soon as it was over, I had a sour taste in my mouth. After much deliberation on it, I have come to the conclusion that The Last of Us Part 2 is not a bad story, it's the wrong story. Let me explain. Also, spoilers for both games. What made the first game work so well to me, and many others, was how well the dynamic of Ellie and Joel was done. Not only was it possibly the best acting ever done in a video game, it was some of the best on-screen chemistry I have seen in any medium.
Stop! Stop!
Fucking touch me!
It's okay. It's me. It's me. It's me. Look. It's me.
He tried to...
Oh, baby girl. It's okay. It's okay.
Oh.
It's okay.
Through Joel's loss of Sarah, he became a hard, bitter man, but later a little girl named Ellie brought him out of that and helped him to both find himself and compassion for something new in a broken world. The entire course of the first game follows a sense of poetry in the way that the story rhymes off of itself and character arcs are easily seen with a sort of mirror image from where they began to where they are now. By the end of the game, when Joel risks the entire world just to save this one girl, it makes sense, and regardless of how you feel about his choices there at the end, they can absolutely be understood if not condoned. And given the ending of the first game, Ellie would come to the same conclusion. The biggest question going into the second game was, where do you take the story from here? It seems like everything was bow-tied, wrapped perfectly, and had a happy ending. Of course, we wanted to see more of these characters, but we didn't know where we want to see them end up. I think, however, we can universally agree that what we got was not it. By the end of the second game, we had seen this bond be broken down, replaced with a secondary stand-in, and in the end, the one who broke this bond was portrayed as justified. This isn't what we want as a community, this isn't what we want as storytellers, and this isn't what we want for these characters. There are a few points I need to get out of the way that absolutely explain why this story is the wrong story to tell, regardless of how well it was told. There's several points I'm going to bring up to back up this idea, the first of which being a base fact we need to get out of the way to understand why this story doesn't work, and that is the fact that Joel was right. What do I mean by this? Well, for a quick recap, the plot of the first game is that Ellie is immune to the zombie infection, or cordyceps, or whatever you want to call it. While what initially seems to be the main plot of the game is to get Ellie across country to a Firefly facility in which this renegade group known as the Fireflies can potentially develop a cure using her genome, it quickly takes a backseat to the real story at hand, which is the relationship of Ellie and Joel. Which is why in the final moments of the game, when these two plots are balanced against each other and the flesh is weighed of which matters more, it's not a hard choice for Joel, and it shouldn't be for us either. First off, and I need to get this out of the way, the Fireflies have absolutely no idea what they're doing. This isn't just an opinion either. The game makes this point very clear. While in the initial days of the outbreak, it seems like there's absolutely a use for the Fireflies, since the government was so maliciously evil, there certainly had to be some kind of rebellion to stop them.
What happened here? Your fellow hunters do this?
Cute. And no, my money's on the military.
Why would they mow down all these people?
You can't let everyone in.
However, in the first game, it seems like the Fireflies are existing just for the sake of existing. Every supposed Firefly outpost that you come across is completely decrepit and abandoned. It becomes apparently clear that they are not the hope for a new world. Their chief researchers couldn't even let out a group of test subjects without getting bitten by one themselves.
It bit me. Oh my god.
Not only that, but if Ellie is truly the future for humanity and the only hope at a potential cure, there are a million options they should exhaust before killing her and doing some form of stupid exploratory surgery in hopes that they may find a cure. This gung-ho nature about killing humanity's ark and hurting others to maintain a sense of power shows recklessness. The Fireflies are no more capable of saving humanity than David's group or the Raiders or any other group of bastards that are met throughout the course of the campaign. However, this is excellent, and it shows the decrepit nature of the world that The Last of Us takes place in. Those so high and mighty who think that they are better than everyone else and think just because they are more organized than some are the right answer are simply as barbaric as everyone else. Ignoring the entire story and everything that happened between Joel and Ellie, Joel killing this doctor in order to save Ellie is the right move no matter how the cards fall. The Fireflies is just another group of monsters in a monstrous world. Ellie is something worth protecting. Now combine everything I just said with the fact that Joel, a man who lost his daughter to this world, was able to find himself again in spite of it through the characters and actions of this one girl, and the fact that she, for the first time in her life, no longer felt afraid. If there is a hope for humanity, it's Joel and Ellie. It's the two of them back at Tommy's ranch surviving. And even if there's nothing left, because trust me, the Fireflies are not the answer, humanity can still exist there while the world falls apart around them. Now the reason it's so important to point all of that out is because part 2 does everything in its power to convince you that Joel was wrong. Again, to summarize, the doctor who Joel killed in order to save Ellie turns out to be the father of our second protagonist in The Last of Us Part 2. As I mentioned before, the Fireflies were absolutely in the wrong. However, the story tries to pull the whole everyone is right from their own perspective in showing us Abby's side of the events that occurred. First of all, none of this is legitimized because of the events that come immediately beforehand. Abby's father, who was going to kill a little girl against her own will because he maybe might possibly make a vaccine, admits that he would not have the courage to do so if it was his daughter on the table.
I am begging you to buy in.
And what if this was Abby?
Also, all of this character development they try to give him in retrospect immediately before is just dirty and lazy storytelling. Secondly, their hopes didn't even matter. In a rundown apocalypse, they want to develop a vaccine. Not only that, they think they might be able to develop a vaccine against a fungal infection, something that can't even be done today with modern technology without zombies running around everywhere. Much less the resources it would require to produce this and get it out on any notable scale. So what, they want to kill this little girl, which is the last hope for humanity, so that some of their soldiers won't die due to bite wounds? Doesn't seem quite heroic to me. However, Abby's rage does make sense. Regardless if he was right or wrong, that's still her father. So she goes on a revenge path, eventually hunts down and kills Joel. Here's our issue with that. If we look at this objectively, and remember what I said earlier that the Fireflies were absolutely in the wrong for trying to kill Ellie. The doctor tried to kill Ellie, to which Joel killed the doctor. Abby then kills Joel, so for to everything equal out, Ellie would then need to kill Abby, and this is what it seems the game is leading to. The majority of the game is Ellie hunting down Abby's friends and other members of Abby's group, the WLF, in order to find her and kill her. Until at the end of the game, Ellie doesn't follow through with it and lets Abby go. And as shocking as that may be to some, this isn't the part that bothered me. I get what the story was trying to do here, and in any other story I think it might have worked. While it would be fair for Ellie to kill Abby, it would just continue the thing that everyone has preached about in this game, which is the cycle of revenge. If Ellie had killed Abby, then maybe the person with Abby, Lev, may one day hunt down and kill Ellie, to which Gina could then hunt down Lev, and the cycle just continues on and on forever. Ellie decides to be the bigger person and stop it right there on the beach. However, what gets me is the way this story is told. It seems like over and over again, we are trying to be convinced that Ellie is the bad guy. Throughout the game, Ellie slowly breaks down and gets worse and worse in her hunt for Abby. A lot of people critique the game for something called ludonarrative dissonance, but I don't necessarily think that's true. For those that don't know, that is a concept in which actions that happen during gameplay don't necessarily match actions that happen during cutscenes. For example, in GTA 5 when you're playing as Michael, you could run around, kill hundreds and thousands of people, and then go to your house and a cutscene starts where Michael says he hasn't seen any action in a long time, which again isn't true because we just killed a few thousand people. A lot of people critique the ending because they feel that Ellie not killing Abby is an example of this situation. Basically, Ellie's killed all these people leading up to Abby, so the whole idea of her not killing Abby doesn't make sense for that reason. However, I think the real problem here is much, much worse. The game gives Ellie the villain redemption arc. What do I mean by that? Well, Ellie starts out on her hunt brutal and monstrous. Not only that, but one of the reasons she's so motivated to hunt down Abby is because of things she said to Joel shortly before his death. While this in a vacuum is fine, having our character be motivated to avenge someone's death because they weren't good to them in life is okay on its own right. However, everything that happens after this is not. Ellie becomes vicious and near animalistic the way she hunts down and kills these people. The game beats you over the head with this by having Abby's people at the WLF all be named and seem sympathetic during action sequences and yada yada. It keeps hammering in the point that Ellie is doing the wrong thing. However, her actions are exactly what Abby was doing or was planning to do whenever she was hunting Joel. But if we keep this idea in our head that Ellie is wrong, then this scene at the end makes sense. If we treat Ellie as the villain and that she was being villainous this entire time, then this final moment of sparing Abby is not ludonarrative dissonance, it's redemption, which I for one think is disgusting. From Abby's side of the story, it is constantly shown that Ellie is a sort of monster, or boogeyman that's hunting down WLF members. The game is trying to convince you of the fact that everyone is the hero of their own story and the villain of someone else's. And while this sounds cool on paper and can work in some narratives, this is wrong. Abby's father attempted to murder a young girl, again, the final hope for humanity, in order to help his own people in their own private realm, and somehow masquerade themselves on a high horse of immorality and call it the greater good. The Fireflies taking in Ellie against her will and then trying to kill her completely warranted everything Joel did. They brought them there and Joel stopped them from killing his daughter. Regardless if the doctor was Abby's father, that does not excuse his actions or her actions afterwards. Going across country to find an idyllic town and be willing to destroy the system existing there in order to get revenge because your father was a bad man is in no way justifiable. Ignorance be damned. While Joel was certainly in the right, Abby is wrong. So it makes sense for Ellie to go on this revenge spree. And while she would be justified to kill Abby in the end, she doesn't because she's the bigger person. Or at least that's the way I want to see it, but the game keeps spitting me in the face and saying that Ellie is the bad person, and I should feel bad for Abby. The whole idea of everyone's right in their own eyes works whenever we're talking medial politics or other things that don't really matter. But when it comes to things like this, we have to recognize that there must be objective evil in the world, or else evil just doesn't exist. The morals of Naughty Dog seem very weird here. Why is our character that just wants to be left alone punished, while those looking for trouble are hailed as the good guy? While I was thinking about this and trying to figure out what I say for this video, it hit me like a truck. There's a reason none of this feels right, and like the whole story has this layer of grime to it that you just can't set well with. Someone comes to hurt Ellie, even if inadvertently, leading her to fall back on anger and hunt down retribution that she sees that she deserves. And then I realized, Ellie is in Joel's story. What do I mean by that? It's established in the first game that Joel used to be a very hard man. In the years between Sarah and Ellie, he did a lot of bad things. When thinking about this game and how I would do it better, I realized how well this story would have worked for Joel. Think about it. Someone from Joel's past who he had wronged long before comes and kills someone close to him, my money would say Tommy. Joel feels justified in hunting down this person, and by the time he gets to the end of his course, he decides to be the bigger man and do what he couldn't do before, and that's forgive. Not only would the original killing be justified because we know Joel was a bad person, unlike the way it currently stands where Joel was killed for a righteous act, but Joel falling back onto anger and rage in order to hunt someone down, and only using his current actions to bring himself out of it, i.e. Ellie, makes so much more sense than Ellie falling back on a rage that she had never seen previous and simply relying on her own guilt to be the quote-unquote bigger person even if Abby didn't deserve it. The game so hard tries to get the point to us that Abby is in the right, or at least just in the right as Ellie is. Like I said, this isn't true, but imagine if the villain that hunted down Joel and killed Tommy actually deserved the revenge they were looking for. What if in the early days that Tommy mentioned in the first game, Joel and Tommy killed their father or their wife or something similar? Then when Joel goes on this whole rampage to try to get revenge, he learns through Ellie, the bond that we spent so much time building in the first game, that he can be the bigger person. And instead of quitting in the middle of a cycle revenge when it's deserved like Ellie does, he stops the cycle from repeating and lets that person go. Joel was wrong before, but in the moment he saved Ellie, he was right then. Let those sins of the past affect him now and let him become the bigger person through Ellie. It's so frustrating too thinking about this, because everyone loves these characters, and the idea of Joel completely throwing off the old man because of what Ellie has taught him in these days they've known each other would be such tremendous growth for both characters. There's a reason that the flashback sequences in part 2 are everyone's favorite parts, because it makes the first game seem justified. The way it stands now, they all have a bittersweet taste to them. It's like every one of these flashback sequences just show us what this game could have been and remind us of what it wasn't. Instead, it seems like this game demonizes the actions of Ellie and Joel and portrays the entire first game in a bad light. There's this odd, hateful nature to it, as if their relationship was never justified and should never be considered as such. Instead of Joel paying for the sins of his past and learning that in a new world, hate will only beget hate, and a little girl that has the ability to save mankind is the only thing that can save him from himself. Instead, we get a bitter story that just seems to remind us that all of that relationship didn't matter, and instead, everyone's wrong at the end of the day. And you know what the kicker to all this is? I don't mind a story like that. If you were to take a story and have both sides be wrong, and both of them working in circles to the same end goal that doesn't matter, that could work, and that could even be great. But this just isn't any story. This is Joel and Ellie. The most common defense I've seen for this game is that it's just a look at someone else's story. And they're right. But this isn't someone else's story. This is our story. And I just wish that we could have got the right one.
I do okay.
Are you fucking kidding me?
You're welcome, kiddo.
Thank you all so much for watching. Like I said, I just made this because I promised myself I would, and it's something I've wanted to get off my chest for a while, and if you stuck out this long, again, thank you for watching. Thank you to all my patrons, but a very special thank you to my top tier patrons. Thank you Kayla, thank you Pef, thank you Eddie, thank you Benjamin, thank you Tim, thank you Publius, and thank you Saucy. New conspiracy video will be out soon, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you to all of my subscribers and watchers. You really do mean the most. I will see you all in the next one, and again, thanks for watching. Bye.